Hello, hello, hello. One second here. Kind of just walked on in. Just kind of jumped into it. Oh, man. Okay, let me pull myself together here. All right. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's see here. Get myself together here. Okay. Making sure got everything together here for all right. Oh, well, sorry guys for being a little bit late. Family plans took a little bit time, hit a little bit of traffic, but everything's good. Glad to be here. Well, okay. Well, welcome to the UX workshop part 2. In the last one, last week we focused on the UX research side of things. We went through a whole project. You can see that video. It's on. I assume it's on Twitch. It must be on Twitch. It's also on the YouTube channel, so that's there too. And so to recap, we kind of freestyle. We kind of just took a random idea. We were talking about having an app that you use to watch anime. Nothing too crazy. Not too many screens. Just like 2 screens, so that we could get through it. But we went through the whole process. But we focused heavily on the UX research side of things. So today we're going to focus primarily on the UI design side of things, so we can get a nice balance. And so let me kind of move some stuff around here. Move all the stream stuff over to the right so I can see Figma front and center here. So to do a quick recap of what we did. All right, so we came up with our idea to work on an app to watch anime. We talked about what our user research plan was. We did a screener survey, right? Came out with a couple of questions that would be good for the screener survey. Again, to reiterate what the purpose of a screener survey is, it's so that you can not only collect people that you can talk to get user insights, but you also do it in such a way that makes sure that you're not getting too much of the same kind of person, and so your data isn't tilted in either direction. And then of course it also helps you to get a better idea of what you need to do to make sure that your app is more three-dimensional, or your app, your website, whatever it is, your product is more three-dimensional. When it's more three-dimensional, it appeals to a good amount of people. It invites new users to come in to to make them into constant users of the app, and then also adding features that make like the people that use it a lot, it makes it so that they're happy, so it is kind of it better ensures that your success. So we talked about the screener survey. We talked about the type of people, the spread of type of people we'd want. We talked about what an interview script would look like for that sort of thing. And then, what we would do after we, do those interviews. I actually tried to interview a couple of my friends who I know watch anime on apps. I was trying to get some real insight, but I couldn't get a hold of them. Well, I did, but they didn't have any time for an interview, so we have to go with the fake stuff that we came up with. And so, we do our interviews, right? And then we collected, all this fake. We collected, user insights, and we talked about how you can decide what's something you absolutely need to do, what's something that you can kind of just push by the wayside, right? With affinity mapping or affinity diagramming, whatever you want to talk about it, right? Brought over to our design file. We stuck them here so we have them in mind, and then so the stage that we're picking it back up at is the actual design part of it. So the idea is, so now we take the insight that we got from the users and user testing. We start designing our app, and get that ready for user testing, which is where we, make different versions of it. We put it in front of them, find out, and then we whittle it down through their feedback to the best possible version. And that's when we actually start programming and creating it. Saves an incredible amount of time, saves an incredible amount of money, and ensures that you have success, out the gate, rather than putting what you think is a good app out there and then, finding out, over the course of 7 years, what's good and what isn't. So, all right, so we're focusing on the UI design side of things. So, how exactly do you make decisions? How do you come up with what your design is going to look like and stuff like that? So this is, one way that I do it. It's going to depend on, your situation and things like that. But the nice thing is, it seems intimidating at first, but once you start doing it, yourself, it becomes a lot easier. So, so the first thing I like to do is there's websites like this one. If I can pull it over here. All right, so let me see what I got to do to make sure you can actually see that. Give me 1 second here. Okay. All right, so obviously we're designing our obviously we're designing an app, right? In this scenario, we're just designing it, as an app, on a phone, right? But you keep in mind that there's plenty of different kinds of screen sizes, right? There's iPhones, there's Androids, there's, tons of things in between. And so the first thing you do want to think about is, well, which screen size should I design for? Because they can be drastically different. If they were just longer than each other, that'd be one thing, but they're not. They're also times wider, and longer than each other. So you might be like, okay, well, which one, should I go with? So there's websites like this, like StatsCounter, that tells you what the most used screen sizes are, in the world. And maybe you're not shooting for a world. Let's say maybe, just North America, right? And if so, we're just designing for mobile. I'll choose mobile. I'll choose North America. Is my internet slower? What's up? Okay. Okay, well, I don't know what this is, but it's popping up here. Okay, so I see here that the most popular phone size is, 390 by 840. And so if I search that, you see, what is that? 390 by 840. So, yep, it's still the same as what I saw. So that's the iPhone 12. So then the iPhone 12 is, the most commonly owned phone right now. Or at least that screen size is. And then the second most commonly owned is whichever one is 4x4. To be honest, I was right here. I could just look at this. It's 4.5 by 896. Is that it? So that's your iPhone 11. Looks like it's the iPhone 11, right? So okay, but 412, 915, that's the smallest one. So that's the other thing too, is that if you design for a bigger phone, excuse me, if you design for a phone that's bigger, then that's bigger, things are obviously going to shrink, I guess you could say, on the smaller phone. Now, if you do it responsively, it's not going to be that huge of a deal, but it's just something you want to keep in mind. It'd be good to test how things are going to work on the small phone, versus the big phone, so you can, get an idea for that. And what I say that the smallest one is 412, 915. So where is that? 412, 915. Man, I don't even know what that is. That might even be an iPhone. I don't know. I'm curious. One moment. Let me see what that is. Or 375, 667. That's... okay, iPhone 6. That's an old thing, man. I can't speak, though. I'm always like 3 or 4 or 5 generations behind. Okay, so that's iPhone 6, right? So let's just say... what that means for us, then, is, if we're here in Figma, we're going to create a frame. Let me see, where am I here? And hold on a second. when it's still like, ugh. I just gotta straight up share my screen. Give me 1 second here. I'm sorry. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out how all this works. Okay, that's how you spend it. Okay. Okay, apologies. Alright, sorry, I'm just trying to get... I don't stream very often, so I'm just trying to get used to this. I'm also... Ugh. That's the problem. I have this thing so it's always on top, and so it's always in my way here. Okay, so, so we said the first thing is 390 by 844, so then that means we're going to 390 by 844. Man, I drew really big. Right? So that's our most common phone, right? We want to, so that means that, you know, hey Julian. Hey, nice to see you. No worries, man. No worries at all. So and let's you know, let's even label this. So the 390 by 844 is the most commonly owned smartphone size. So that means that, you know, that's a big thing for us. And then we'll say the least commonly owned phone we'll say that the smallest. Smallest most common is 375 667. Okay. And let me try to... So I'm trying to organize some of my stuff here. Okay. Okay. In fact, let me go ahead and move all this stuff out of the way, because this is just kind of notes from before. We'll come back to them in a second. But okay, so this is our, you know, the most common phone, presumably that our customers, our users, are going to be using, right? So then that means that, you know, this is what we want to, you know, design on most of all, right? But if it's possible that we could also design it so it fits well on the smallest most common phone, that'd be fantastic. You know, that opens up, you know, how many people can have a good experience, right? So you just kind of keep this stuff in mind. Now this, what we just did here, that depends on, you know, who your audience is or who your users are. So if you were designing an app just for kind of like for everybody, then yeah, this is, you know, this would be a good starting point. And also keeping in mind, you can't please everybody, right? You can't absolutely make it for every single device perfectly, but, you know, the most common, like, you know, go with that. Now, for example, me, in my job, I design apps for people to use within the same company. So our apps are not going out to, like, you know, the everyday public. So then what that meant for me at my job is I contacted whoever the guy is that like has those numbers, and I asked him like, okay, so what's the most commonly owned devices, you know, within our company? And, you know, they said iPhone 12, which is also, I believe, the same size as the 13 and the 14, the regular 14. So and then he also told me, he says, also we're pushing everybody, like we have a couple, like I think it was like 80-something% was like iPhone 12, and it's because they're all company mandated and assigned. And he said anybody who's older, we're pushing them to iPhone 12. So it was like, okay, perfect. You know, so iPhone 12 is what we're going to primarily design for, because everyone is going to be on that, you know, eventually. So this process right here about, you know, figuring out what screen is most common, that really depends on your situation, but this is a really great place to start. Okay, so then we know what screen we need to design for, right? Now, there's something else that's good for us to look into, and that is, in fact, you know what? It'll just be a lot easier if I do this. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Yeah. I was kind of doing like like an app window capture, and it's just getting annoying. Okay. So the next thing, so right, we got our iPhone size, iPhone 12, right? So now there's some things you need to keep in mind when you're designing for mobile, and that is that, you can't just go off and create, things however. I mean, you technically can, but you have to keep in mind you also, like for Apple, it might be different for Android. I haven't done any like Android specific stuff. Like ours is mostly Apple and some Android, so I don't know. That's a programmer's thing. I let the programmers handle that. Signes, thank you for explaining all the stages. I'm currently learning to get in the field. I do have more questions about the field itself. Absolutely, Signes. At the end of this, I'm going to have at the end of this live stream, it should be about an hour and a half. I'm going to have a Q&A. I'll have I'm going to have an entire time set aside for Q&A. Will you be able to wait about an hour and a half for questions, or you're gonna, let me know. Is that okay? Like it'll be like an hour and a half or so before questions. Okay, cool. All right, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure. Otherwise, what you could do now, if you'd like, you could start posting the questions now. You could start dropping questions now, and you know what? If it's something like relevant, I could just answer it right away. And yeah, for anybody, if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and start dropping them in chat now, and I'll either get to them if like we end up covering that sort of thing. Otherwise, I will cover them, during the Q&A portion. But absolutely, yeah. Thank you for sticking around, Signes. I appreciate it. So like I said, you ever notice like on iPhone, like pretty much every app, you're always gonna have the status bar at the top, right? I mean, that's something like your app has to respect that design, right? Because like I said, that's kind of a programmer thing. I let them handle that kind of stuff. But at the so your app, I assume that your app can get rejected if and if there's any programmers in chat, please let me know. I'm pretty sure it can get rejected if it doesn't like work with that sort of thing. Even then, you want it to work with it because that's the device it's working on. So you want to design it to work well with it, right? So then you have you can go to Apple to get their guidelines and stuff. But I was surprised. Then again, I may not be looking in the right place all the time. But I'm always looking for like very specific numbers, and I don't. But this website here, this article that I found by Eric D. Kennedy for Design Guidelines, does a really good job of breaking it down. And all of these links that I'm talking about today in stream, I'm going to. Hey Amanda, hey, welcome. I'm gonna drop after the stream is over. I'm gonna drop all of these links into the description so you guys can find it too. So what he does is he has quite a few really nice illustrations to let you know like how things are laid out. For example, when it comes to iPhone, and this is really important to know. So like for example, right, we said the iPhone or the screen size that we're going to work with is 390 by 844 because we found that's the most common one, right? But that doesn't mean that your app is going to fill up the entire 390 by 844. There, in actuality, it's a smaller portion of that. By the illustration, it's only this yellow part. Well, could also be this purple part as well. It depends. But generally, like you're not going to get the entire section because you have to leave room for, the status bar and the home indicator, right? And as you notice, they're all certain sizes. That changes based on screen size. Not terribly. It doesn't change terribly like big, but there is a difference, and so you have to design according to that. On top of that, there's also behaviors. So like, for example, this whole entire section here is called the nav bar. There are 3 possible nav bars, right? And you'll see them in pretty much, in every app, right? So this right here shows you what those 3 nav bars are. Nav bar 1 is where that's where you'll see like the back button, the blue arrow, kind of stuff, and then like a lot of like commands for that affect the pages, right? The second row is common to see like the title of something, right? And then the third row is if you have a search bar, typically it's going to be in the area where the nav bar number 3 is. All this will make sense when we start doing it. Also, too, nav bar 2. If you have a title here, and you scroll it up, the title, like nav bar 2 disappears and the name pops up here, right? So there's like, it's designed to work a certain way, and the better that you work with that, the better, your app is going to work, the more efficient it's going to be. And also too, since, iPhone users are very used to this sort of behavior, it'll make it easier for them. That's it's one of the usability heuristics from Nielsen Norman Group, is being consistent if there's a system already in place. Unless and keep in mind those heuristics, they are fantastic, they're awesome, but keep in mind that every situation is different, so you need to find out what your situation is. Okay, so that's been explained. So let's in fact, you know what? I already did this already. You know what? No, let's do it from the beginning. Let's do it right from the beginning. Okay. So I'm looking at this. So status bar is 44 pixels high, right? So I'm going to make a box here just to make sure I block out that space. That's 44 pixels high. Also, I should point out in the article, let me see here. This is what it's in general, but when you start, you'll notice here, like, almost all, if the phone has a notch, it's 44 pixels high, but if it's an iPhone 14 Pro, 14 Pro Max, then it's bigger than that, right? Happily enough, we're pretty much fine, right? We're going to use, it's the most common ones, right? So this is the status bar, right? So we got to make sure that we have enough space for that sort of thing. All right. So right now we're kind of blocking out the areas and deciding like where our stuff is going to go, how much space we have. Then we have the nav bars. There's 3 of them. Let me see. The first one is 44, I believe. And I'm going to change the colors on this stuff here. I think I'm going to make this green. Ooh, that's a bright green. Hold on. I just gave myself like a headache. Okay, so that's navbar 1. And let me see here. Let me see. So status bar is 44. Navbar 1 is 44. Second row is 54. So make this 54. Kellen, welcome. Let me see. Ketlin Matos. Yeah, absolutely. Hi. Thank you so much for joining. I'm glad. I'm hoping this is helpful. But thank you for joining. Let's see. And so this is navbar 2, and then and like I said, I'm gonna put the links to all this stuff. Yep. So Signy. So right now, this is you could call this lo-fi wireframe. Yep, exactly. I'm just kind of like blocking everything in, so that I know, like, I get the basic idea of how much space I can work with, and it'll all kind of make even more sense in a second. But yep, absolutely. This is what you would call lo-fi wireframing. Yeah. Let me see. And then this is navbar 3, which is 48 pixels. Is it really? I thought it was 44. Hold on a second. $48. I'm just gonna go with 48. Okay. Right? Now that doesn't mean that you're going to have oh no. What just happened? Sorry. It was just bugging me that it wasn't in center. So for these nav bars, now that doesn't mean that you're going to have all 3 of these nav bars at all times. It just kind of depends, right? So like I showed in the web page, that blog post, like if you have a search bar, it's going to be in nav bar 3. But also in there it tells you that if you have one of those screens where like you have a title here and it's supposed to slide up here. Well, the navbar 2 disappears in the search thing, you know, slides up to navbar, you know, navbar 2, right? So it really depends on what you got going on and how you want it to work. I have a feeling we'll have a search thing though, because that just makes perfect sense, because we're talking about doing like an anime thing, so it makes sense that it would. All right, so there's our three. So status bar is 44, navbar 1 is 44, navbar 2 is 54, navbar 3 is 48. So I have a feeling we're not going to have navbar 2 very often. I don't think we don't have pages like that for this one. Let me see. And then so the bottom part, we have the home indicator. Not much, you know, you can't really do much about that. That's the home indicator so that you can slide up. And so we'll make that bluish. And I think in that article that I'm referencing, I believe he also has Figma files for everybody, so you can just download the Figma file and he does it. I'm kind of a glutton for punishment. I like to do it myself. It just helps me. Okay, and then so this is what's called the tab bar. So if you ever seen an app, in fact, he's got an example. This good guy, he's got an example here. So that's when you have these icons here. So you have an app where you can like navigate to different parts of the app, right? Like there's different sections of it. Again, it depends on your situation, but Apple, you know, recommends that you always keep those on all the time so people can move around as they want, right? So that's where that would go. And they also tell you like, you know, how big the font should be, you know, for those things, right? Again, completely depends on your situation. You can't see? Hold on 1 second. Hopefully this is better. Yeah, let me zoom in. Yeah, so the tab bar, so here's the home indicator that we made, that little thing at the bottom. And then so the tab bar is, you know, apps where you have these icons that let you move to different sections of the app. And so it's recommended that it's, you know, kept there. Well, Apple recommends that you keep it there, you know, all the time. But as you'll see, as you start designing, like, and start to, like, you can get kind of annoying because you're losing, like, space. But anyway, that's what it is. That's what the tab bar is. I don't know if we'll have that or not. I couldn't imagine that we would. Hey, Koshal. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can take a step back. So what I'm explaining here is, so what we did was, oh, okay. Were you able to see it? Let me see here. Okay. Hopefully you're able to see it. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, guys. Guys, I'm so sorry. I'm so new to this streaming stuff. I apologize. Criminy. This probably wasn't on screen the whole time. I'm so sorry. So this article, you know what? Hold on. I know what I can do to make it a little bit easier here. Robert, welcome. Koshal, yeah, I apologize. I'm going to explain again. Amanda, I'm really sorry. I'm so used to this stuff, man. I'm just not used to this stuff. So this article explains, to back up a little bit, you know, we're designing for this screen size, right? So, but the thing is, just because, you know, the screen size we're going with is 390 by 844, it doesn't mean you get that entire space to make your app, right? Apps are, every iOS is designed a certain way. So what I'm explaining here is how the iPhone, for example, is designed, right? So, and you know, where you should be putting your information and your tools and stuff like that. So there's a status bar that's always at the top. That's 44 pixels high. There are 3 possible nav bars, and that's about, that all 3 of them come out to like 98%, 98, you know, pixels. Which ones you use depends on kind of what you're doing. The yellow part here is typically where where your page content goes, where your actual content goes. There's always a home indicator at the bottom, right here, which is like 34 pixels. And then there is a tab bar, which is this section here. We're on apps where they have like the buttons to navigate around to different parts of your app. Like that's where that information, that's where all that goes, and that's 44 pixels high. So right now we're going through kind of all the quote unquote rules and guidelines to follow if you're designing an app for an iPhone. If you design according to it as much as you can, it'll work better. And there's a pretty good chance that, you know, it won't get rejected by Apple when you put it through the App Store. I don't know much about putting apps through app stores. All the programmers and devs I work with, they do that. So I could be wrong on that, but I assume that's part of the deal. So what we're doing right now is we're kind of, let me see here. Make it different color. So what we're doing here is we're kind of just blocking out, you know, the different areas of where things go. Just to give us, you know, an idea of, you know, the space that we can work with, you know, and, you know, so that we're working within that frame from, you know, that framework from the beginning. Okay. And we're actually going to just ditch that for now. We're just going to focus on the most common one. Okay. So this is what we've done so far. You know, we looked up what is the most common phone that our potential customers would use. All right. And made sure that we designed for that. For that primarily, but also considering smaller phones. In fact, I should not have gotten rid of that because we're going to do that. I don't know why. Right, so that's the thing. Like you know, there's plenty of screen sizes, so it's good to know like what's the most common one, which one your, you know, customers, you know, your users are going to use most. Because if you design for that, you know, then they'll be happy. Best experience for that device. Like I mentioned, for example, the company I work with, I design apps for just for people working in the company, and so I just asked, well, what's the most common iPhone we use? It's iPhone 12. Okay, then I designed for iPhone 12. We looked over the guidelines for, you know, some guidelines for how you design, you know, for Apple. And so now we're going to start making design decisions based on the research that we did, the quote-unquote research that we did a few days ago. All right, so this is, and I'm going to grab this stuff. I'm going to drop it in here too. I'm not 100%. Oh yeah, that should all be correct, right? But there you go. So I mean, this is why you want to consider, right? Look at this huge difference. So this is the most common phone owned, right? And this is the smallest screen, most commonly owned phone. So you can see here, I mean, there's a huge difference, right? So, you know, we might want to take into consideration, you know, these smaller phones if we can. It's a very small portion of people that use it, right? So, you know, and always we want to shoot for the most common one, right? Also keep in mind they're going to upgrade at some point. But if we could also design so it works with this too, then we're doing good, man. We're doing really, really well. So, all right, so let's get into it. Let's see here. All right, so the first thing, you know, we talked about designing, you know, this is an app for watching anime, right? We're going to do a home screen. So, so the status bar, I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. Did I group those? I did not. All right, so that's not, I won't say it's off limits, but like we can't put anything like important up there, right? We can't put anything like in terms of like buttons or anything, right? Same for the home indicator. You know, we can't put any action buttons there. If they're action buttons are going to go here in the tab bar. But yeah, so that area is also kind of sort of off limits. It's not necessarily true, but we're just going to say it is for the sake of this, right? Okay, so our main screen, you know, is going to be where you're presented with, you know, all the anime that you can watch, right? So I'm going to put these. Can I? Oh, duh. All right, so I'm going to put these off to the side for right now. But these also give you, like, you know, like I said, they give you some insight into how big things should be. All right, so first we'll talk about, okay, so what kind of stuff is going to be here on this home screen. So what do you guys think? This is interactive. So this will be a home screen for anime. This is where, you know, have all the different anime and stuff like that. So what are some things that we would love to have on the home screen? You know, just go ahead and shout them out in chat. You know, for example, I'm thinking we're definitely, you know, having a search bar. A search bar would be really nice. You know, that might be really good. Obviously, we'll have the anime, right? Popular picks, that's good. Popular picks. Maybe a favorites. Favorites might be good. Let's see. Any other ideas? Let's see here. Trending. The latest episode of what you're watching. Previously viewed. Yep. And then the newest episode. Like I don't know what the word, like the episode you're supposed to watch, that you're supposed to watch next. So I would really appreciate that. That's something I would, you know, previously viewed. Okay, very nice. Nice. So you can see, like, we're already coming up with quite a few things, right? Now, how about what are some tools that would help you to find? Let's assume there's like 1,000 different possible anime on this. So what are some tools that we could use to help find the anime that we're looking for? Recommendations, yeah. Yeah, I might actually even put popular picks and trending and recommendations. How do you spell recommendations? There we go. I can't remember if it's 2 C's or 2 M's. Thank you, Koshal. You got good spelling. So maybe put these together since they're kind of connected to each other. You know, favorites. Right? And some tools for finding anime, because if you got a lot of anime, you need stuff to find them, right? So search bar. What do you think? I'm thinking you know, like a sorting feature. And filtering. And now what would we sort and filter by? Search bar is always, like, to be honest, is always my favorite because I am not like a categories. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, both really. Filtering. Auto type, yes. That's awesome. It's like an auto, yeah. Yep. Auto type is good because that's also like a recommending type thing, right? That can be extremely helpful, right? So sorting, filtering by categories. Episode length, that's good. Yeah. I think it's pretty typical to do like an A to Z. To be honest with you, I mean, if there's so many anime, I kind of wonder. Oh, rating, that's really good. I don't know how if someone would want to, like, to be honest, sort all these anime by A to Z and Z to A, but I mean, you know, it's there. Well, the thing is, when you combine sorting, when you're able to combine sorting and filtering together, I mean, you're really able to. That helps quite a bit, especially when you have like a ton of stuff. Being able to combine those tools together is really, really helpful. Right, very good. Let me think here. Yeah, any other ideas what we can sort and filter by to make life easier? Oh, very good. Z-Quad, welcome, welcome. Yes. Yep, subbed and dubbed. I used to be a dub guy when it came to watching anime. The The only anime I really watch anymore is One Piece because I really don't have that kind of time anymore. But I watch dub, I think, until like episode like, oh man, like I don't know how far along, but they were in Sky Island, so we're talking really, really far into it. And then someone told me, no, you need to watch this in subtitled. And they're like, that's like the voice actors are a lot better. And holy mackerel, yeah, I started all over again. And man, yeah, those voice actors are a lot better in sub than versus dubbed. And dubbed, they make a lot of mistakes too. So yeah, but yeah, subbed and dubbed, nice. Language preference. Yes, nice. Fantastic ideas. Awesome. And so you see what we're doing right now, right? Is I really wish I could have interviewed one of my friends to at least get us some like real data. Man, they didn't have any time and I didn't have any time. But so you notice that, you know what, maybe, even if this kind of stuff wasn't mentioned by users, it's like, it's fine. Like, you are not like, yeah, you're absolutely, doing user research to find out their needs, but you are also a designer. You're not, all you want from users to find out is what they want and what they need. And then it's up to you as the designer to decide on that solution. Okay. So it's not like you're losing any of your quote unquote power or artistic, ability or or being able to be creative as a designer. You're just making sure you're designing for the right things. And then of course, when you have your solutions, your possible ways to do this, you do user testing to make sure that those work, to test them out, to make, to verify them, right? So, this type of stuff here, this is a part of the process, So cool. All right, so let's start with this here. So we got the status bar up here, right? That's going to be like those symbols and stuff. The tab bar. You know what? We may end up having a tab bar. I don't know. Well, let me think. I don't know. We're only doing 2 screens. I hope I don't go overboard. I get really into this. I really love this stuff. I really hope I don't get too much into it. Okay, so all right, so we're going to have status bar, right? And here's the point I make. So we talked about having a search bar, right? And so if you remember our guidelines, the guidelines that we went through, this is the section where it tells you that there's 3 possible nav bars. There's 1, 2, and 3, right? And they're different sizes. Nav bar 1 is where you have your like navigation stuff, right? Nav bar 2 is typically where you see like titles. Okay, nav bar 2 is, I think it's exclusively just for titles. That's why it's so huge. It's like 10 pixels bigger than like the first one, and I think it's just for titles. So that's about it. But your search bar, as you notice, goes into the 3rd row, nav bar 3. And so that also tells you how big your search bar, should be. We're going to talk about that in a second. But for iPhone, the 3rd row is 48 pixels high. So that means that the area around your search bar should be 48 pixels high. All right, the area reserved for it. So that's the purpose of those guidelines. It's to help you stay in there, right? So then nav bar 1 and of course, like I said, you can choose to not work in those guidelines, and it would be fine. Like there's some things you can't get away from, but you do have plenty of space for other things. But also too, like I said, it's a part of UX that everyone who owns an iPhone is expecting to find buttons and stuff in the same area. And so nav bar 1, if I can, I hope I'm not jumping around too much. Nav bar 1 is where not only you have your navigation stuff, but where typically you have tools, especially for transforming the page. So when we talked about having filtering and sorting and stuff, this might be a pretty good place for those things. Again, the thing is might be. It depends on our situation, but this might be a pretty good place for that sort of thing, right? Okay, so navbar 1, we'll say that you know, we can have our logo here. So let's say this is our, you know, our logo. So this whole page is 44 pixels high. Yeah, and again, this is how we're doing it. It doesn't necessarily have to be done this way. Let me see here. So let's say this is like the logo for it, right? Let me see if it's 44, then let's say the logo is, I don't know, that big. Let me see. And you know what? I like to do things in factors of 8, just because they scale really, really well when you do that. So let's say, so we're going to create a component there. And this is 40 pixels high. Right, so we'll stick the logo here. And that's also something else when it comes to padding. I can't remember where in here it says. I can't remember if it's here or if it's in the actual Apple guidelines, but it's like 8 pixels. So they want you to have things 8 pixels, you know, at least 8 pixels from the edge. So our logo would go here, right? All right. Our search bar, you know, we're going to have a search bar, so that would go with navbar 3. Right. You are allowed to have, so even though there's a navbar 1, even though there's a navbar 1, 2, and 3, they don't always go in that order. Navbar 2 like disappears for different reasons, right? So we have navbar 3, so that might be where our search is, right? And so I'm going to purposely make this like not refined, because we're going to talk about how you decide how big stuff is in a second. And stuff like that. Like we're just... So how big is this? 48? Okay, so I'm going to... no, because it'll cover the whole thing. I want to make this 44. And so... just blocking stuff out, get an idea for how stuff will be. Actually, you know what? Okay, let me make you 24 then. Is that cool? Yeah. And I'm going to make you a component, because I'm going to work on that. One thing that really annoys me about Adobe XD is when you duplicate stuff. So if I duplicate this, I hit Control D and I move it. This is like the child that I'm moving, right? Makes sense. If you duplicated something, it means you're going to do something with it. So that's like the next thing Figma has you select, but in XD it's the other way around. So if I were to duplicate this, I have to then click off, go to the list, and pick the one I want to move. And oh my god, it drives me nuts. Anyway. Alright, so search bar there. Right, and we'll say that... say I make these... And so this would be like the filtering and sorting icons. Right, so I'm just going to... No, hold on. Oh wait, you know what? I know what I'm doing. I'm clicking and dragging rather than just like holding. Okay, duplicate that, rotate it, and so okay, and sort of blocking stuff, right? I'm like, okay, I'd put icons there. You know, take a step back, look at it, decide, you know, if that's what you want to do or not. Right. You know, and then let me see. And then these, you know, and then we'd have, you know, these boxes for like the anime. 100. I'm just making them 100 just. Oh, I forgot. I forgot I'm not an XD anymore. That this thing actually is awesome. Forget that I'm dealing with awesome software again. I have a feeling that I duplicated something that I didn't want to duplicate. Did I? No? Okay. All right, I'm just like blocking it out, okay? Look at that, right? So just getting basic idea, right? Don't know how pretty this thing will look in the end, but you know, we're gonna give it a shot, right? So we look at this and like, okay, you know, that's like a, you know, block it out to see if stuff would fit kind of a thing, right? Just get an idea. I'd be like, okay, this looks good. You know, plenty of space to see, you know, all of these, you know, plenty of space to see all these titles and stuff like that. We've got a search bar at the top, you know, nice and tidy. Hopefully that logo size is okay enough for the client. You could always make it so that it starts out big and then when you scroll up, it gets smaller. That's always a possibility. Right, so we kind of just, you know, put this down. You know, if we have a tab bar or not, kind of depends on us, right? So you get an idea for what you want. So now it's time to do what ZQuad had talked about in the last stream, and that the secondary research, right? So now you might think, okay, I want to have a sorting and filtering button, right? Obviously, we're sorting by different and filtering by different things, right? Okay, so what's the best way to do that, right? And you know, the search bar. Okay, what's the best way to do that? You know, even showing these, you know, these, you know, the anime content, right? It's like, well, what's the best way to do that? So, I mean, you know, it's at that point, that's where you want to start to do a little bit more research. Now, you could just copy off what Netflix does and Amazon Prime and stuff like that and just say, oh, well, they're successful, so they must be doing it right. Really, the best thing that you can do is you go into like, well, what works best for, you know, users typically, right? And that's where you have articles and sources like the Nielsen Norman Group who provide that kind of stuff. So one thing you do at Nielsen Norman Group, they have just like just so much information, man. And so what they do is they take, you know, common things that are seen today, common patterns, and they put them through a lot of user testing, or they look up studies and reference studies that have already done that as well to find out like what really is the best practice from a UX standpoint. You know, because, you know, although like, yeah, we're following Apple's, you know, standards when it comes to the design of things and how things work, because you really can't get around it. But that doesn't mean that they are, you know, that their way of doing things or recommending things is what's best for the users. In fact, in my job, you know, my devs, they really like to design things according to how Apple says to do them. But, you know, and they say, well, they must be doing a lot of research when it comes to user testing and you know, and users, right? And I'm like, they do a lot of research, but they're not doing like as much as other like organizations, you know? It's kind of like how, you know, search bars were always at the top, or have always like been at the tops of pages. Like even now I put up here at the top. It's really not the best place for them. down at the bottom is where, where your thumbs are is really the best place. At the same time, like the best place, we'll talk about how you can determine what the best place is. It really depends on your users. But the point is, like, even though like Apple may do things a certain way, but that doesn't mean it's the best way. Like even Google. So if you notice that, for a long time, Google and like Google Maps and stuff, they put the search bar at the top, all the old versions of the software. Well, now you notice they're putting them at the bottom. And that's because it kind of just made sense, but no one like really, I don't know, they kind of, like in the beginning, they're kind of just doing their own thing, but it made sense. Like, well, you should put the thing you're going to tap the most, you could put it right near the thumbs because we control phones with our thumbs. So now we're starting to see those things come down, but that was called out a really long time ago. And so that's the other thing too. Like you have to decide, what's best for your users. I mean, that's why you do user testing. You find out what works specifically best for them. But anyway, that's what Nielsen Norman Group does. And so, for example, they have a mobile study guide, which goes over so many things about the best way to handle things, right? Tablet usability. I jump on that one all the time because we're starting to design for iPads now, right? So I'm reading everything I possibly can about that, right? So this is where you'll find, stuff about that. This article especially is pretty incredible. I think this is the one. Hold on one second. I'm pretty sure this is it, but let me double check. Pretty sure, yeah. Oh, yep, this is it. And so there's also something something you also need to understand as designers about this too. Okay. So like I said, we decided, right, as designers that we need to have, a sorting and filtering button, right? That's something we decided. But now, for example, it's like, well, how big should it be, right? What determines the size of it? Now, it's common for people to say 40 pixels, which it usually comes out to that. But Nielsen Norman Group says, it's really not that simple. And it's actually really good because that number 40 was actually a little bit arbitrary. But Nielsen Norman Group did tons of research and they found that the minimum size should be 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. Okay, that should be the touch area. The icon doesn't have to be the same size as the touch area, but there should be a touch area, right? But they also found that the thumb, though, is, even bigger than that, though, 2.5 times, 2.5, centimeters, right? So it really, so the point is like, well, it depends. If they're tapping on with their finger, then one by one. If they're tapping on their thumb, it'd be really great to do 2.5, right? So now what's really common though is that there is a, since we work in pixels, it's common, it's very, the 1-to-1 centimeters usually came out to 40 pixels, right? And so that's why you hear 40 pixels, 40 pixels, 40 pixels, 40 pixels, right? But that's not necessarily true in every case. Here's why. So every device not only is a different size in terms of pixels, but also has a different scaling, or in other words, how big and small the pixels are. So to give you the cliff notes on it, as you can see here, this is what we're talking about here. The amount of pixels. To give you the cliff notes, if the scaling factor is 2 times, then I think the smallest you want to go, I believe, is 40 pixels. There's another article. I always have trouble finding this guy's article, but he has a calculator that helps you calculate it. But generally, yeah, if it's 2.5 scaling, which I think is around the time when the article came out, when a lot of them were at 2 times scaling. Did I say 2.5? I'm sorry. 2 times scaling. The smallest is like 40 pixels. But when you go to 3, it's actually the smallest size you can do is like 24. The smallest, though. Not saying that should be the most common, but the smallest. So that's something that you need to look up also as a designer. we're using the iPhone 12, right, which is right here, right, and we're at a scaling factor of 3. So 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter for us is actually, I think, like 24. But again, that's the smallest. The bigger we go, the better it is. I think for the thumb, the 2.5, well, it's whatever that is. I think it's like 40 or something. Like, I don't know. I can't remember. Sorry. My point is, that's stuff to keep in mind, when you're doing it, knowing all this stuff. But anyway, so we're like, okay, well, we have, we know what buttons we need. How big should they be? So we're going to go with 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. For this, it's like, I think it's like 32. Like I said, I'm sorry I didn't do the research beforehand. It will take too long to find that stuff again. But we're going to say like 32, right? So cool. Awesome. So then these buttons here, we're going to make 32 pixels, which is not too bad because it actually works pretty nicely for when it comes to, having nice design padding and stuff like that, right? Okay, so we decided we're going to go with that. Our search bar, and that's the other thing too, is like, well, how do you decide 32 or 40? Well, it depends on what your most commonly used actions would be. So whatever they're going to use the most, you want to make sure that's nice and big, easy for them to get to. Anything that's like kind of secondary, you can make it a little bit smaller and put it in a place where it's not so prominent, right? So we're going to, search bar is going to be used quite a bit, so we're going to make sure that's a nice size. So we'll say we can make this a height of 40. And that'll work. Let me see, where's the rounding thing here? Wait a second. Can round this a bit. Right, search bar, round it a bit, right? So we'll make that 40 because it's primary, and then these smaller buttons, it's also a sort of, like designed for like hierarchy and association type thing. There's a lot of that stuff I'm not gonna be able to get into, but yeah. So these will be 32. Search bar will be 40, right? So that's good. That's perfect. We can also make this, since the padding is like 8. We could bring these. We could bring this out. Oops, nope. We could bring this out. Well, actually, let me make sure this is. Okay, that's 6. Oops, what did I just do? Right, so we can make it so this goes out to there, and I think this is already 8 pixels from there. So we can make this out to there if we want. If it doesn't end up looking good, we can just... Very good question, Amanda. That's exactly what we're getting into right now. Yes. So, let me see here. I'm trying to think. Oh my goodness. I wish I could have looked up a lot of this stuff beforehand. Let me see. If not on here, then I know where I can. Let me see here. Spacing. I wonder if it's in that article. I don't think there was anything about that in the article. I could be wrong though. I can't remember all these articles. So yes, there is. Yeah, because it talks about how when things are too close, to avoid big enough, also spell swell enough. Too minimum space in. I don't know if they gave. Let me see here. So yeah, I don't think there's like a specific. But I'm gonna share. I know where there's an article. I just was curious to see if it was in here. Let me see here. So I mean, there's articles you can look at. This is not the one I'm used to looking at. Because there's spacing for design, like in terms of like good, like. I'm trying to remember. It's not. There's a word. There's a word for it. Is it this one? Because it looks like I've been on this quite a bit. Yeah, this is the one. Yeah, so it also depends on how big your buttons are. You know, if they're small and close together, you're gonna have a tough time. End up tapping two of them. If they're big, they can be closer together, right? But yeah, so I think so this article here, this is at least a good. It completely depends on you and your needs, but this is pretty decent. So yeah, if you got smaller, having 30, it said 40. These were 42 pixels, like 36 or whatever. Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, it'll kind of make sense to you. But these are decent guides to go by. At the very least, follow it in principle, right? Yeah, just follow in principle. But yeah, I can't think of there being, and I've looked up articles like this, and they all say something different. Yeah, I think I typically, it really depends. I'm trying to think about what do I do most often. Yeah, absolutely, Amanda. Yeah, what do I normally do? I'm trying to think about what I think I usually go for, like, for small buttons. I think I go for like 20, because it's not just like I mentioned. These are not lined up at all. Because it's also in balance with, like, just good design, like having enough white space and stuff like that. And so I think for buttons of this size, I go for like 20. And so far that's been okay. But yeah, it's something you'll kind of figure out. Like, the article I think said like 36 or something, which you're definitely not going to make a mistake there. But that's a lot of space, so yeah, we'll see. But thank you for bringing that up, Amanda, because that too also works with our, how close together should, these, the whatchamacallit, like this anime, these anime titles be, right? Because those are essentially big buttons, right? And then, also terms like, how many should there be? Should there be a row of 3 or a row of 4, right? That might be something where you might do user testing on that. But there's a good art, but there's let me see, where is it? There's an article on, let me see here. I don't remember exactly where it is. Thumbnails. This is specifically for lists. I could have sworn there was another one. I apologize. This is the downside of, like, flying it freestyle. It's like I can't find any of this stuff. But I'll say, like, one good principle with, like, having thumbnails is one good principle is to follow is, is it helpful? Obviously it would be, right? And then the size of it is, the general principle is, like, if it's too small, if it's so small to where you couldn't, like, see it, well, obviously it's too small. I guess that's dumb. That might be where you do user testing. But let's say for our purposes, we're going to go with a row of 3 of them, right? And since they're nice and big, we can afford to have not as much space, but the more space the better. Well, I won't say the more space the better, but it gives us plenty of options, right? So let's say, so these are, let's say I want to keep them 15 apart. And like I said, it's good to, it's just my personal thing. I like to do things in multiples of 8. Well, that worked out pretty good, actually. Look at that. So I like to do things in multiples of 8 just because they scale better when with responsive design. So this is like 113. Let me think here. 80. Oh my goodness, I have to do math now. Hold on. That's why I'm not a math teacher. Let me see. So 80 plus 88. So 112. See, I don't know why. I could have, like, in my head, I was like, it's 112, isn't it? And then I just second guessed myself. Right? And then keeping it so that they're... Oops, let me hear. And then... Hold on a second here. Am I... Yeah, there we go. So that should be a nice, that should be a pretty big size. And I think these are 18 from each other, so that's not too bad. And of course we'll do testing to find out if it is. Okay. And there's Figma with the good UX, right? So you go. So these ones, they're 18 pixels apart from each other, which should be plenty because they're really, really massive. They're 112, so that should be a really nice size. I think Instagram thumbnails are like 100 pixels. That's great. It leaves us space for 3 of them. If need be, what would be the size up? 120. We probably could put less space between them, but we'll kind of just see where we land at. We might just kind of, we just play around with things to find out, right? And so, there we go. So we're kind of blocking it out, right? So that was so that was some of the secondary research we did, for touch targets just for one. Like I said, and it's not always there. You're not always trying to look for exact numbers. When it comes to guidelines and stuff for like iOS, like, yeah, absolutely, you're looking for exact numbers. But a lot of like design decisions, it's principles, which means the rule to follow is this, but it depends on but apply to each situation, right? So that's the whole point of it. Okay, so we got that. Let me ungroup them so that they're free. We bring I'm so used to whatchamacallit. There we go. Bring to front. I'm so used to XD. Right. Okay. And so also too, we're looking, okay, well, is this feasible for, this smaller screen, right? So bring this stuff over. And I can already tell, like, it's gonna be... Wait, what are you doing? Oh, I see. Duh. Give me 1 second here. And so I can already tell that it is, right? It's gonna be perfectly fine. Especially for designing things responsively, like, it'll still work. Man, I love Figma. I love Figma so much. Right? So we can see that, oh, this is perfect. It's still going to work. We're going to lose quite a bit of space here. Right, just to put in perspective. No, not you. I think that's like... Now the distance from here to here, that's not bad. Okay. So let me point that out too. So the distance, so like when choosing like, okay, what's the distance between here and these things here? That's where it completely depends on you as a designer, and it's going to be the distance from here to here. Right, so that's a design decision. So one thing that I will look at is, give me 1 second here. There's a book I have. 1 second. I don't know where it's at. I hope I didn't lose it, because I really like that book. Okay, I can't find it. But it's kind of just it's just one of those design. It's one of those design laws for like hierarchy, right, and association. So in other words, things that are close together, you're going to assume that they are associated with each other, right? Like they're related to each other, they're important to each other, they belong together, right? And then things that are not close together, you're going to assume that they're separate, that they're separate from each other. Things that are really far away, that's like, look, those things are not related at all, okay? Things that are like, they're far away, but close together, you're like, okay, they're connected somehow, right? So like, for example, we have these three icons here, right? They're really close to each other. They're lined up next to each other, right? So we assume, okay, like these are related to each other in some way. And it's like, you're absolutely right. They're all related to each other, and that these are the tools that you're going to use to move around the page. The search bar, is by itself, right? And that's because it is different from these tools, right? But it's also close to them, right? They're lined up next to each other and they're close by, and that's because they're all related to each other in that they're all tools. This one's a primary tool, and these are secondary, but they're grouped together because they're all related. And then we have this gap in between, this, 15 pixel gap between the search bar and the content. Exactly. Amanda, yes, that's exactly it. Yes. And so now if I put these like really close, let's say like 5 pixels close, let me get rid of this. Right? So now, looking at this, so now it seems like these are related to this as well, right? In fact, if anything, based on spacing, these are more closely related to the search bar than these are to this. But that's not true, right? These are tools, and this is content, which means they need to be far enough away from this that, that they are, that you don't, like, the person doesn't get the impression that they are, related to each other. So for that reason, and I didn't delete it, did I? I'm pretty sure I just, hold on a second. Let me put it back here. Right? Keeping it, close, so we need to have, there needs to be some separation between these areas so that these are not the same thing. Like if you're looking for tools, you're not going to come down here, right? So there needs to be a little bit of separation. How much separation? Depends on you, really. Like, to be honest, even 15 sometimes feels a little harsh. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll find out when we get there. But that's one of those things that kind of falls on you as an artist and as a designer. Deciding, and then that eventually turns into a design system for all the apps. So like, for example, I'm the design lead for all the mobile applications in our company. And I also decide the design standards. So, I'm the one who I try all these different things to see what looks good. And then once I find a good pattern to work with, then I write it down. I say, okay, here's how you determine if things are like not like related but not closely related. There'll be 20 pixels between each other. If they're really far from each other, then it's like 30 pixels, right? And so it's kind of just one of those things you have to kind of like, you'll figure it. It's as you get into it, it'll kind of just, you'll find it out. You'll tweak here and there and stuff, and then you'll eventually figure it out. All right, and so we're looking here at this small screen, right? Right, we put a search bar here. We're ditching navbar 3. And so here, just because it's a different size, we're the spacing principle still works. Did I go with 10? I went with 10. So yeah, 10 feels a little better. I don't know why. It just feels better to me. But I could be wrong. It could be these green boxes that are throwing me off, to be perfectly honest. I'm not sure. But that's also too, that's kind of weird because like the distance between the search bar and these is 15, and the search, and the distance between the nav bars in this is 10. So that's completely up to you. you know, how you want to deal with that. You could even put the search bar here if you wanted to, but it's up to you. You know, it's completely up to you, right? All right, so now we're looking at, okay, so how would this affect these smaller devices? So that 8 pixels thing, that's true on both devices. You know, like, well, I said that Apple likes to have at least 8 pixels on, you know, of padding on the ends of each side. Well, that's 8 pixels here and also 8 pixels here. So now we can see there's a little bit of problem here, isn't there? This same size grid is not going to work here, right? So now it's a question of, okay, there's a couple different things we can do. We can either make these thumbnails smaller, or we can reduce the distance in here. Normally, I would say reduce the size of the thumbnails, but to be honest, I think we have plenty of excessive space in here. So let's see here. Let's see. Let's say 15. See what 15 looks like, right? Right. So now we have 12 pixels of padding on both sides for the big screen, right? But that's not a problem. It would only be really a problem if it was too small. Let's see what happens when we do this. I don't think that's enough. 5. Okay, so that's 5 pixels. You know what? Let's start from here. Let's try 12 maybe. Perfect. So, and I think 12 is good. What do you guys think? I think 12 is that's still plenty. I don't think you would end up hitting the wrong anime. To be honest, probably even do 10 if we wanted to. I'm a major padding guy. Right? So there we go. So right? And so that's how you would, and that's how you design, you know, with smaller screens in mind, right? If anything, we probably should have started on this device first and foremost, right? But there we go. So that means that if they open the app on this small screen, it'll be compliant, no problem. This is like not compliant, right? Hold on a second, Harold. I put in the wrong thing, didn't I? I sure did. 1 second. That's why we color code stuff. And I just buried my search bar. Wait. Okay, where am I at now? Hold on. Oh, I'm stupid, that's why. Right, so there you go. That's kind of how that works. You know, you test it, you know, on the smaller device, and you know, so there you go. So if they open up these apps, then they're both good. You know, otherwise, if we just would have gone with what we want to do for the iPhone 12, it may not be as usable on the smaller device, or you'd have to shrink the thumbnail size down. Which, sure, maybe you'll do that. Maybe you would just do that, but bigger thumbnails are probably better in this case, right? And then as for like stuff up here, stuff within the nav bar just kind of stretches and moves around. So to be honest with you, it's perfectly fine. The only time it wouldn't work is if we had, you know, a bunch of these tools, right? Where we had like, you know, like a whole ton of tools, right? You know, it may not work over here. But as you can see, we only have, you know, 3, so we're doing perfectly fine, right? Let me see, what time is it? It's an hour and a half. Oh, man, dude. Oh, this always takes longer than I think it's going to take, right? Okay. Let me see here. Well, no, I think we're doing okay. We're doing okay. We're doing all right, right? So this is the home screen. So let's talk about icons, right? So we know that we're going to have this kind of stuff here. Oh, let me see, because the other screen we're talking about making is like a video watcher. Oh man, I don't know if we're gonna have time for that. Let me think for a second, because to be honest, I didn't want to go super long today. One second, let me check what the weather's like, because I'm supposed to go. That's kind of what I was talking about. I was supposed to let me see what's going on here. Oh. Okay, I guess. No, I had plans with my wife. I guess she's going somewhere. Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'm okay. Okay. Yeah, let's talk about icons. So, you know, should you design your own icons or should you go with, you know, ones that are already existing? That completely depends on you. That's a discussion you want to have with your developers and your programmers. And the reason why is you need to know what kind of framework they're designing in. And I'm using these words being not a programmer or a developer. So I might be using the wrong words. Just wanted to also show this. So yeah, you see that difference? Right, we're going from look at the huge difference between those two, right? But it'll still work if we design according to it, right? Keep it in mind. So that's something you got to talk with your developers and your programmers about. So let's say you were a freelance, you know, UI UX designer. You'd want to talk with the client, ask them, so who's your programmers, and you know, and how are they planning on doing this, and asking them, you know, if you want them to talk with them. And the reason is that whenever you make your own icons, and they're programming the thing up, if you have, you know, it usually gets saved as a PNG. And the problem is PNGs can be, you know, at least for mobile apps, they can take up a lot of space and it'll slow things down. And so instead, there are icons that are already existing that they don't even have to say an image of it. They kind of just reference it. And so it's designed to work better for mobile apps. So that's a discussion that you want to have with them. You know, when you're a designer and you're kind of like learning this way, the thing is you're learning in a vacuum. And so you're learning just how to do things like one way. And that's fine when you're in school or when you're being self-taught. But when you get into the real world and you're actually working, you want to be able to collaborate with everybody on the team. And that will just make everybody successful. And to be honest, it'll make, you know, you a better designer. So you want to talk with your programmers, developers, find out like, okay, so what's the deal? Like, you know, what icons are we using? And then, you know, grab from their selection. So one thing, for example, if you're using MUI, I believe it's MUI, you can go to Google Fonts icons. If you just, what did I Google here? I Googled material icons. Did I really? Okay, whatever. And so here you go. Here's all your icons here. Also good for saving time. I, for the longest time, created all my own icons just because I like designing stuff. But now that I do it for work, I'm like, dude, I don't have time to design all these icons anymore. I just want to copy and paste. And here you go. This is where you can copy and paste. So we're going to grab from here. So we have sort and filter, right? Okay. And, you know what, let me go ahead and give me 1 second here. I want to make all of these links that I'm going to, I'm going to drop them into the description for the stream. And I want to make sure that I get all these here. All right, so sort. Okay, and SVG. Save the SVG and just Drop it in there. It's good. They're vectors. You can scale them up, all that good stuff. I'm just going to use this one as an example. Right? Okay. And so we said how big our icons are. Our icons would be 32 pixels, right? But the icon is not going to be 32 pixels because it looks weird. So you'll see what I mean. Let me see here. So the smallest number. So when you drop it in, you're dropping it in, and you're scaling it according to the same. The same scale you got it from Google, like, so you don't want to stretch it or anything like that, right? So let me get this here. Properties, variants. Man, I love, every time I use Figma, I'm like, I weep for my soul because I don't have, because I have to use XD. Right, so we'll always have a default one. Wait a second. Sorry, I'm trying to... Here we go. That's right. That's how you do it. Sorry. XD doesn't... They do, but it's crappy. They have something like this, but it's crappy. Okay, so we create a variant, line them up. That's not exactly what I meant, but... Excuse me. So I'm going to show you what it... So if it was 32... rectangle, and we bring that down. What are you? I don't know what happened there. Oh, I see. Okay. So, so the thing is, so in this current state, you know, the whole thing is 32 pixels, the touch target. The area, in other words, the area that you can touch to make it, you know, to tap it is 32 pixels. Do I recommend buying UI kits? Signies, it's completely up to you. I personally haven't really run into a need to. Because you can go to a place, you know, you can go to a place like Google Fonts, and I mean, they're like all there, and they're free. You know, if you're trying to do something super unique, maybe, but otherwise, I mean, you just download this stuff. Yeah, I've never run into a need for it. So I guess if you really need some icons for stuff that like icons don't exist for, which is really like even currently on a project I'm on right now, like there's some icons for stuff that like we have, like it's, I don't even know how to describe what they do, let alone find an icon that does. Yeah, yeah, if you need something unique, then sure, but otherwise, man, like all the icons you could possibly need are all free. You know, and you just download them. So I haven't run into a point where I need to yet. But yeah, it seems to me that's only for like unique stuff. So the touch target is, you know, 32 pixels, which means, you know, you have to touch the icon itself. Which, I mean, you know, it might be okay, but it looks kind of like, you know, obviously they're spaced aside, you know, 20 pixels from each other so you don't actually tap on the wrong thing. But they look kind of like, like a little bit weird. So instead what we might do is we make the touch target 32, but we make this 24 pixels. And so that's a little bit better, right? So that also means you can touch the area around the icon, to touch it. And just, and the size of the icon, compared to the touch target, that's completely up to you. That depends on, you as a designer. But yeah, it just looks a little better. When they're not all like humongous. So cool. So give me 1 second here. I gotta. Okay, so let me get. Okay, and there's filter. So we've got filter, we'll do the same thing. Okay, I think I have a feeling I messed something up with this one. Hold on. I thought it looked weird. Hold on. Yeah, I thought so. That looked just really, really weird to me. Let's see here. Yeah. I have looked at many a search icon in my project, and I was like, something looks weird about this. Yeah, there we go. Oh my god, I was like, something's ugly. I didn't want to offend Google here, but I was like, but no, I must have like accidentally resized it somehow. But yeah, there we go. And to be honest with you, wait a second, that's not. Wait. I didn't? I am very confused right now. Is it really that ugly? Oh, I see. Oh, the container. Oh, you know what? Or it could be that... Oh, I see. The container that it comes in is a certain size, but the icon itself is actually a different size. Okay. Oh, I should have just dropped the container in there. Okay. That's also another option, is you can... So this is 16. So that's 6. So the icon size here is 16 and this one's 24. It kind of depends on what you want to go with. I think 24 is fine. Yeah, I think 24 is fine. Because you don't want it to be so small that you can't see it. And to be honest with you, I do not like these icons because they are not like super clear, especially on mobile. They're not very clear. On my current project they were working on, I'm fighting to have them change it to the arrows. Because I'm like, this just doesn't look, I don't know. Anyway. Okay, so that's how you would go about, doing your icons, right? Just go to Google, drop them in, make variants and, and Figma. And the nice thing is you can change them out and, as you need to. So something else that we would, so we talked about filtering and sorting, and having category, episode length, sub and dub, language preference, those would be options. So you'd pull it down and those would be options. Man, we're approaching the end of the stream here. Hold on 1 second. Show you guys something else. Okay, so So something we talked about is the sort and filtering. You know, that you'd be able to sort by these different things, right? So the question is, how do you want to design that? So this is again another example. This is a conversation you'll have to have with your devs and your programmers. All this stuff, by the way, you should have conversations with your devs and programmers to find out what's possible and what isn't. I'm trying to think, where is it? Is it no, I think it's in patterns. Let me see here. So there's a couple of different foundations, is it? So Apple has a way that they do their menus so that I'm trying to remember where it's at. I could have sworn it was patterns. Hold on a second. Sometimes you make me mad, Apple. Not sometimes, all the times. One second here. Mortality. You're killing me here, man. Why can't I find any of this stuff? No, I have to show this to you because menus and actions, is that it? Here we go. So let me see here. So this is typically how Apple does it, right? They have like this menu stuff. So for example, you would a stroke here, and this thing would be rounded, let's see, by 10 or whatever, right? So Apple does a lot of stuff where you would tap on this icon, how far, 4, 5, right, and a menu would pop open, you know, and you would choose from that list, which is kind of how like desktop does, right? Which you know, again, this will depend on you. That's up to you to decide how. But you can see the obvious problem with it. That's something else I forgot to point out. Sorry. But something else that you should be looking at is this stuff here. So we talked about, I apologize if I backtrack a little bit here. I really should be writing scripts for this sort of thing, which I think I will next time. We talked about what kind of stuff we should have, right? We talked about what features we should have. We talked about what size those features should be. But we also have to talk about the position of those features and those buttons. And so, as you can see here, the green part, most of the time we're navigating our phone, the most comfortable is using our thumbs, right? Having to use our fingers, that's this stuff up here, or we stretch our thumbs to get up there, right? So you need to consider, you know, the position of those things. So, you know, anything that, like we mentioned, anything that's like a primary function, something that you're expecting them to use a lot, it really should be down near where the thumbs are, okay? Now, it's very common practice to position it like this, which is counterproductive to this. Which you know what, this might be a chance for you to put some new practices into play for your app, right? Which we've done that, and it's actually been really great results, right? So the position of them, you know, this is where you would determine it, right? Most primary stuff would be in the primary actions would be in the most common area where your thumb would be. Anything that's secondary that they may not use very often, for example, looking at their account, yeah, you would definitely put them in the upper right because, you know, they're not going to go up there all the time, so you don't have to put it anywhere, you know, really easy to touch. And so the point I'm making is that Apple, a lot of times, they like to do this, where, you know, if you hit the sort button and then you have your sort options here, right, they have a menu that comes down here. One thing that I've been adopting with my team instead is, and other companies have done this too, is where you would hit the sort button and then this would pop up. It would pop up from here. And then it would say, like, this is a, you know, not exactly the best example, but it would say like sort here. There's an actual like guidelines to follow for this sort of thing. And then you'd have your sort options here. Same thing with the filter. You'd put them all right here where your thumbs are. It's just easier. a lot easier. This is how you do it on desktops, right? That works fine for desktops, but mobile should be all about the thumbs. And so that's where you're gonna have to decide, a designer, what you want to do. And not only that, like, there's other companies that have done it that way, and it works fine for Apple, for iOS devices. But that's something you might want to consider too. So, as a UX designer, you figure it out. There's no harm in creating a version like that, and then showing it to both the user and just letting them decide which one is best. But we changed all of our mobile stuff. We got a lot of pushback from the people on the desktop team, but we were like, look, we're doing it the best way. We're gonna do it the best way. This is the way they want to do it. Let us please do it this way. We got pushback for this, but we changed all of our menus to be in thumb, and it's been going really, really well so far. And upper management has agreed to let us do it. But that's just something you would keep in mind, for this sort of thing. I said, man, I can't believe it takes a lot. This stuff takes a lot longer than I thought it would. No. 1 second. The other screen we talked about, was creating like a video screen, right? Let me see. I'm trying to think what else, we can do here. Yeah, I don't know. I apologize. Man, I did not think it was going to take this long. I've had a lot of fun though. Yeah. Well, to kind of explain where you would go from here, I don't know. Maybe there'll have to be, a part 3 stream where we go into this a little bit more. I don't know when exactly that would be, but I don't know. Maybe we have to have a 3rd live stream to cover, to go even further. But I think this is probably a good stopping point. So to explain where you'd go from here, right? You would have your designs here, and you would have multiple different. Yeah, I guess so, Julian. I guess I'll have to do a part 3, so that we can go in a little bit deeper into things. But I think this is a good stopping point. So my point is that you would, as a designer, you might come to the crossroads that we're at right here, right, where you're like, get this here. I'm glad it's exciting for you guys. I'm glad this is helping. My goal is to try to help, and I'm glad it seems like it's working, right? So you might come to like this type of decision here. You're like, well, how should we do this? Should we do it like Apple does, where we have the menu over here when they hit it, or maybe we should have the thing pop up here? Make both of them, make both of them and then test them. Do user testing. Let your users decide how they want to do it. So we'll stop here. We're gonna do Q&A though. We're gonna have some time for Q&A. Like I'm not gonna take that away from you guys. We'll do Q&A. But that's my point, is that you'd make different versions of it, and then you talk with your devs and your programmers, like, is this possible? Is this, because I don't want to show something to users that isn't possible, only show stuff that we know for sure we can do. And then you'd show it to users, you do prototyping and stuff, and then you'd go on from there, and then they would determine what's best. So let's say they like it popping up from down here, right? You're like, okay, then we're going to keep that moving forward. And then you just, if they say, oh, I don't like this here, okay, then we're going to change things and test it again, you know, and you keep doing that. And when I say keep doing that, it really doesn't take that many tests. For my user testing purposes, it takes like each test is like maybe like 30 minutes, I'd say. And the most I've ever had it done is like 2 rounds of designs. And then they're like, this is perfect. And it's like, that's it, we're done. Move on, next thing. So cool. So we're going to stop here. Yeah, so we'll stop there. And yeah, I guess I'll just have to have a third live stream. Figure out when I could do it. We'll figure it out. All right, we'll figure something out. So let's do it. Let's do some Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please drop them in chat. So Signes, how much time does a UI UX designer have on average to show wireframes? Is it every week? So it depends. It depends on your company and how, like, what their entire process is. So most companies nowadays, they use what's called Agile, which I don't know what it is. Like, I don't know how to explain it like 100%, but and it's a pretty good, and it's kind of in line with the way UX kind of is, and it's where instead at least our company calls them sprints, right? So what they do is they assign a feature to you and they say, hey, we need to design this feature. You have 2 weeks like to make some progress or to hopefully finish it in 2 weeks, right? And so at the end of the 2 weeks, if we're not done, then they extend it another 2 weeks, but they just make sure, like, okay, what do you have to do to get this done in the next 2 weeks, kind of a thing. So, and then you do that over and over until it's over with. So how often does it show wireframes? So it also depends on who you're showing wireframes to. But I would say, like in terms of because you're also going to present them to your team, you're going to present them to users, you're going to present them to upper management in many cases. As for showing wireframes, at least once a week, I would say. I'd say like the minimum, like what they and it kind of depends on each designer. At the minimum, what my team requires of me is at least once every 2 weeks. Our sprints are in 2 weeks. So at the end of the 2 weeks, I have to show them something. And then we decide what to do from there. I do it more often than that. And personally, I think you should show them as often as possible. And it's because you want to get feedback early. And that's feedback from your programmers, not just user testing, but like the programmers and your devs. Make sure that this is possible, right? Even if they're like, I don't like, just to get ideas too. As a UX designer, that doesn't mean that only good ideas have to come from you. Some of the best ideas that we've had for features in our app, I've gotten from like other people who are not designers. Okay. They might be developers, might be programmers, they might be like our product manager, like our boss, right? You should not be trying to make it so that like, I don't know, you that's my point. As a UX designer, you should not be. Yeah, Odyssey. I'll put it this way: like I do work with some designers. I don't work with them; they're on a different team, and they're very like, this is the way it's gonna be done. They don't like to get feedback very early, and they suffer for it. And when it comes to the chain of the process, I mean, they decide what they want to do. The designer designs it, and then they give it to the programmer to program it, right? So technically, we have authority. Exactly, ego. Yeah. Technically, we are over the programmers. And it's like that's fine. That's a good thing. Because a good UX designer will design according to what users want, and that means that if you did that, the design you come up with and you've tested is like the best way. That should be the way that we do it, right? But the thing is, if you always insist on the way that you know how to do it, then you're asking for trouble. Go ahead, Odyssey. Yeah, absolutely. If anyone has any questions, just go ahead and throw them in chat, and I will answer them. No problem. Yep. So yeah, I'll tell you this. When I first got to the company, I've kind of worked my way up the chain. But when I first got there, I noticed that like people, like designers, would work on their designs for that 2 weeks, right? And at the end of the 2 weeks, they would present them to management or whoever, and then they'd get shot down, and they'd be told like, this is not good for this reason or that reason, and then they have to go back and like redesign. The problem is they spent 2 weeks. 2 weeks. Imagine if we did this for 2 weeks straight, get super far, and then find out that it's a bad idea, and they have to redo all of that stuff. And so I was like, dude, it's a waste of time. So every 2 days I got with somebody, with like management if I could, and said, how does this look so far? How does this look so far? Like, it only took me like 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes of their time. So I know that I'm on the right track. And that was back when they didn't when they didn't let me do user testing. Now I have user testing, and oh snap, I'm kicking butt, you know. But yeah, like that's something that's really important for designers to do, is learn to get feedback on your work. Very often, it will sting. Trust me, it will hurt when you've been working on a design that you think is really, really cool, and then someone says they don't like it for one reason or another. It hurts. It really does hurt. But the more you do it, it won't hurt as much, and you'll understand the mindset of, I tell everybody, I'm like, you're not going to hurt my feelings, because I'm not married to the design that's sitting in front of me. I'm married to finding the best design possible, and that does not mean what I think is best. It means what the greater good is. So do your absolute best to not like fall in love with your designs. Be willing to get feedback from everybody. And when you do that, your team will appreciate you, your management will appreciate you, and your designs will be the best designs ever, because you got a lot of minds on it instead of just one. So that's probably the biggest piece of advice I can give to any new designer when they first start their job, is to do that. Are there any adjustments you make in the UX process when time is constrained? So let's see. So, yeah. So absolutely. Mostly so I try to... before, in the beginning, like I said, there was no user testing whatsoever. And that's pretty common for a lot of companies, is there was no user testing whatsoever. So what I did instead was, I was like, okay, well, if I can't like pick out users to talk to, then I'll talk with management. Whoever the guy at the very top who makes like the final decision, I'm like, that's fine. Then I'll talk with him, And then eventually, like I said, the apps and programs we design are for people that are in the organization. It's not for random people. So eventually I was able to meet some people in the office, and I said, hey, could I like call you sometimes to run stuff past you? And so I started kind of doing it with them. It was kind of like informal, and I only had like 1 or 2 people. Mostly it was one person, which it's like, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. So, but now that I have user testing, I do all the steps, all the time. With that said, I will do all the steps, but I may like shorten how long I do them for, I guess. Well, like I'll give you a really easy example. So like, like our Figma file that we're working on right now, right? I might, come up with 5 different possibilities, right? And I would love to do user testing with those. That would be fantastic. And that might take like a full week of testing. Them allowing me to do user testing was like a huge ask for them. So, and the thing they were worried about is the amount of time it takes. So I proposed them, I said, okay, 3 days. Like, give me 2 days to prepare the Figma files for prototyping, and then give me 3 days of testing, right? And I always ask, I'm like, I need at least 6 people, right? So what I do is, instead of having 5, I mean, literally for one of the tools we had, I had 9 different possibilities, right? But it's just not, and like, that's the other thing. I can't spend more than like 30 minutes with each user. Sometimes 45, but if they heard I was doing like 45 minutes or an hour with each one, they'd say, no, you're taking up a lot of time, right? So that's fine. So instead of presenting 9, I try to get some feedback on which ones we think might be best, and I'll cut it down to like maybe 3. And so instead of testing 9 possibilities, I'll test 3 possibilities I think are really good, and then 30 minutes with each user. And I'll try to go for 6 users. And I would, what I would do is take those 3 and run it through all 6. But but the first 3, if they're saying the same thing, like they say, you know what, they changed, like if all 3 say change this, change this, change this, then I'm like, you know what, I won't go straight to the next 3. Let me make those tweaks. So kind of like do a round of tweaking, and then present this new designs to the next 3. So usually I do like all 3 designs through all 6, and then next week do another round. But instead I'll do that if it becomes really apparent. So yeah, so I try, so in terms of the steps of the UX process, I do it every time, but the amount of time I might spend, I might shorten, which I would love to have more time, but they're not going to give it to me, so it's okay, How to handle Q&A suggestion for UI, when to take them, when we're in a tight deadline with a pitch. Let me see. Yeah, so to be honest with you, Odyssey, you kind of just got to work, you got to just kind of work in your own, how much time you got left. Obviously, you should always have enough time to present the best design, right? And that's happened. And I'm going to tell you where I work, when things are delayed, there is someone's getting yelled at. Someone is getting yelled at, usually. I'll say softly yelled at, but someone's getting yelled at. Like there's tends to be really high stakes. But that's when, you beg for mercy. So if you can get more time, get more time. Otherwise, man, you do it the best that you can. Perfect example is there was a feature they were working on that I knew was like, oh my God, I hated this thing. But this is before they allowed us to do user testing. We came up with what we thought was the best solution. We put it out there, right? And that is what's going out the door now. Then they allowed me to do user testing. I got far ahead, so I went back and did testing again and found out that our design is okay, but we found like the perfect version, right? But it's too late. So what's going to happen is we're gonna push out the version that we decided as a team was good, okay? And then sometime in the future we'll upgrade it to this, awesome, perfect user tested version. So sometimes, and that's the other thing too to understand as a UX designer, is that sometimes, and this is something especially important when talking with your programmers or your developers, understanding their limits, is that it would be awesome if we could do the best UX every single time. But sometimes you can't for one reason or another. Happily enough, there's best, there's better, there's good, there's okay, right? So I mean, you try to aim for the best every time, but sometimes you got to settle for just like second best. And so Odyssey, in terms of like, sometimes you have to you don't have any more time for suggestions, if you're already like decided on something and you're going forward, right? And you get suggestions like, oh, that would have been a fantastic idea. Awesome. But if you gotta push it out, just push it out and get to it like another time, and that's just kind of part of how it works. Is it okay to do internal testing with dev and QA teams? You can't get actual. So here's what I would say. Any testing is better than no testing. Okay? First and foremost, any testing is better than no testing. Yeah, if you can't get people, then, that's the best you can do. What I will say is if, and like I said, and also the Nielsen Norman Group has an article for when you test using people within the organization, okay? Because sometimes you have to do that. What I'll say is if you can, try to avoid using other developers or other designers as testers. And the reason why is they will have biases. I'm not saying this in a bad way, but they will have biases and they'll look things, differently. Like, I will honestly say now, having done so much user testing and user interviews, I am kind of untestable. Man, because I have so much trouble. I have so much trouble thinking about things as like a user anymore, as opposed to like a designer. So I'll give you an example. When I was filming the How to UX Design Part 2 video, I think I even have it in my footage somewhere. While I was filming, I got a call from Meta to do a user interview for their Quest 2, because I had volunteered for their research a long time ago, and I have a Quest 2, and I use it a lot, right? And so they interviewed me for that. And dude, I can only imagine it must have been horrible, because man, I just can't, my brain just doesn't work that way. Like my brain is completely rewired now. I can't, it's so difficult for me to do that anymore. So the point I'm making is when you're a developer or a designer, you think differently, and it's really, really tricky. Try to get like just random people who don't do either of those jobs. You'll get better results, but otherwise some testing is better than none. So that's how Odyssey's question. What sort of question do you typically ask doing user testing? Let's see, sort of question doing user testing. So let me see here, and that's the other thing too. Like I think, was it Amanda? You asked about adjustments to the UX process. Yeah, see, that's one too. Like, I have to cut down the number of questions I can ask. So the first thing I'll do is I'll have them use the design, and if I can, I'll try to not just show it to them and say, what do you think about how this looks? Because that can be really objective. Like, it's really, really relative how things look to people. So what I try to do is I try to have some sort of task for them to complete. Doesn't have to be long. In fact, the longer the worse, to be honest with you. Unless you're like that far along, but if it's just, so like, for example, like the one we were working on, let's say I said, okay, I want you to find, in this list of anime, I want you to find One Piece. Okay? And you say, that's your task. I want you to find the anime One Piece. Go for it. And you give it to them, and you let them figure it out on your own. You do not tell them, use the sort feature to find One Piece. You let them do however they think they could do it. Now, that means that you need to program, like, the sorting and all that kind of stuff. Like, you'll have to program those screens. Doesn't mean you have to program everything, okay? Because that takes up a lot of time, especially with XD. Oh, my God. But I try to give them some type of task, nothing too long. Have them, and once they've completed the task, say, okay, so tell me about your experience with the app. First thing I ask is, tell me about your experience with the app. And so in that moment, they're going to tell me just anything that's most important or stands out to them, whether it's workflow or design or anything, right? Then after that, I say, okay, tell me about the workflow, the steps you had to go through to complete the task. And they're going to tell you stuff about the workflow. They say, okay, tell me about the design of the app, like the buttons and where things are laid out, and so then they're going to tell you stuff about the design. If I have, and then I'll ask, okay, tell me about, and if I have enough time, I'll ask, okay, tell me about, the app's strengths. Tell me about the app's weaknesses. What would you, tell me about what you would do to improve on it. Those are like really broad questions that I would ask. If I have more time, I might ask about very certain special features, right? I might, if I have the time for that, I'll give you an example. Let's say that the Figma app that we did. Most people, me personally, I would go to the search bar. I would go to the search bar, type in one piece, and I'd find it that way, right? So maybe you're like, well, I really wanted them to see use the sort feature and the filter feature. That's fine. Have them do it the way they want. Because then that tells you like what tool they would use most often. You do that with 5 people and they all do the same action, like search bar. That's like really, really good, right? After they do it, might say, okay, do me a favor. Can you use the toolbar up there? Tell me about the tools up there, and let them use those kind of thing, right? And then so I might say, tell me about the sort bar. Tell me about the filter, button, So I apologize if I rant too much, but yeah, those are the questions that I'd ask is, tell me about the app, tell me about the workflow, tell me about the design, tell me about its weaknesses, tell me about its strengths, tell me what you would do to improve on it. All right. And so, that's the funnel technique. That's where we're going from broad questions down to specific bias questions. How you would improve it is kind of sort of an opinionated question, but it's fine. I'm asking at the end, I'm just asking it at the end of the discussion, Let me see. What do you think about AI and UX UI? Good question, Nandish. So, I think, in my very strong opinion, AI will never be able to just... I mean, I could be wrong. AI is pretty amazing stuff. But when I see currently... AI will never, you can never tell AI, hey, I want you to design an app that works, best for these people. Like, it just won't happen because the only way to find out what is needed is to talk to those people. So until AI can do that, which who knows, maybe one day it can, that's just not going to work. One thing I would love to see AI do, man, I would love for me to say, to have it look through, to have it analyze like an interview I did with somebody and to pick out everything that they've said, for like an infinity mapping like we did, a few days ago. I would absolutely love that. There is already programs that you could use to put like your app in it and like figure out like what features they use and stuff like that. But to be honest, like $50 a month, and I mean, it takes you like 20 minutes to do it on Zoom. I think there are plenty of AI tools that would be very useful, but I don't think we'll ever get to a point where you could just say, AI, make this app, and it'll be able to do it, because you have to talk to the users, to get that information. Let me see. As someone who has learned about UI, UX field, Signes, I was reading about how many are looking for work, do tech layoffs. Yeah, so what I can... So in terms of getting a job and, all this tech layoffs, and I can say this I work for a very large company, who also just went through a wave of layoffs. Apparently there was a ton of layoffs. There's nobody that I know, but there was a crap ton of layoffs. By the way, I haven't even yet. I'm just about to finish my first year at this company. Okay? So I'm thinking, snap. I think I'm probably on that list, right? But at the same time, I'm a very high achiever. It comes from loving my job so much. I love my job so much. Like, I just can't stop. So I get really good results. I didn't get laid off. As far as I know, designers didn't get laid off. It was other positions. Now, I work for a consulting firm, so that's a little different. But what I'll say is, it seems that a lot of times with those positions that get laid off, if you're making money for the company, like a designer, like you're making money, you're bringing in money, you probably have a less chance of getting laid off than a position of someone who doesn't bring in money. That's best, And then from what I see, from what I'm seeing, I still see like a very strong gap between what companies think UI UX is and what a UI UX designer actually does and should be doing. Like the UX research thing, the UX research side of things. Perfectly honest, most of the designers I work with, they don't even know how to do that. I think they all went to boot camps. One went to Foundry. Two went to the Foundry. One went to the interactiondesign.org. She's pretty good. She there's some things she's not quite right, like not quite on, but she's good. Like she's kind of one of my mentors, but I also keep in mind that, Irem, how are you? She's one of my mentors, but I won't say that, but I'll say that she's a little off on some things. We get into arguments from time to time, but I show her an article and she's like, oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, to be honest, I know that there's tech layoffs, but I don't see it being a whole lot of UI UX designers that get laid off. So to be honest, I'd say still go for it, man. Still go. In fact, I got a raise. I just got a raise Thursday. I just got a raise. Tons of people are getting laid off in my company, and I actually get a raise. Not gonna lie, I earned it though. I worked my butt off. So I say I don't see it as like one of those fields that are dying at all, like not even close. So, go for it. I don't see like a mass layoff of designers. Some people will say, "Oh, there's too many designers." Dude, there's a lot more. There's more designers than there used to be, but I'm not like, and yeah, there's probably a lot more applicants. But I'll say too that a lot of the applicants, like, they all came from the same. Here is Irem. No worries. Yeah. What I'll say is that a lot of designers come from the same boot camp, and so they're not very remarkable. Like, their stuff all looks the same. They all know the same amount of. They all leave with the same amount of knowledge. And so from talking with recruiters at my company, they say the biggest problem is everyone just is the same exact person when they leave. That's a problem. That's why, sometimes they have trouble getting hired. But if you do it the way that, like, in my opinion, I mean, it worked for me. I beat out like 2 other guys that have bachelor's degrees and are UI designers. My point is there's plenty of jobs. There might be more designers, but you also need to be a little more remarkable. You need to be a little more unique than others. And that's not necessarily your portfolio. It's your experience, actually doing this stuff. So, I mean, in my opinion, that's how you get into it. Otherwise, if you're considering going to this field, I say continue going, because I don't see any problems, So, and I would not say that if I didn't really mean it. Like, yes, keep going to it. Let's see. What do I think of the UX of the Crunchyroll app? That's a good question. I was actually I have the Crunchyroll app. I haven't gone on it in a long time. My biggest complaint is whenever I go to watch One Piece, like, it's never, like, I don't know why, like, my episode hold on a second. Oh, did it just now work now? Let's see. I'm literally on it right now. Oh. Well, the complaint I was going to make is I was trying to use it yesterday, and like the episodes were not updated, but now the episodes are updated. So I don't know. I think it's okay. I'll say personally, as a user who doesn't use it a whole lot, I think it's okay. I will say I'm not the person to talk to about it. Yeah, I'm really just not the person to talk to about it because I just don't use it that often. But I mean, for my purposes, I only watch one anime, but for my purposes, it's fine, Not relevant discussion, but as a computer science graduate and person working as UI UX designer in Sri Lanka, congrats. I'm half Sri Lankan. My mother's from Sri Lanka. She was born in Colombo. I can't remember what the name of where she came from, the village maybe was, but I'm a half Sri Lankan, so nice to meet you, Odyssey. If I'm migrating to do my master's, what kind of program would you suggest, or else do I skilled migrate? If I do skilled migration, will you a chance to find UI UX design job? Oh man, what kind of program? So that's a tough thing. So in terms of like specific programs, like schooling and stuff, I really don't know. I personally, I have an associate's degree. That's what I got, and believe it or not, I actually got it like recently. Yeah, I'm really not sure. I've actually been looking for schools myself to get my bachelor's in it, but I can't say I found anything that I'm like super happy about. Yeah, to be honest, honestly, I'm really not sure. Yeah, I wish I could help you with that. To be honest, I think your skills are probably most important. Yeah, and that's something I'll say. I mean, you know, as someone who has just an associate's, I didn't even have the associates when I applied for my job. It's a long story. I'm not going to get into it, but I didn't have anything when I got this job. I mean, they cared about my skills and my experience, like not just my experience. I only had like a year of experience, but just the way I talked and my knowledge of it. That was what they hired me on, you know. So, yeah, I apologize. I can't really help you with that one there. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really not sure about that one, but I'll say that if you got good foundational skills like this, I mean, you'll kick butt. You know, you'll be very desirable. I mean, that's one of the things that I pride myself on, is especially having done this several times. I tell people, I'm like, I get results. I'm like, I can guarantee results, because I haven't failed so far, and it's because of the UX method. It's not me. It's the UX design process. I get results, man. And so if you're one of those people that get results, I mean, you'll be desirable. And it also depends on your resume, how you present yourself, which that's a video I'm working on. I'm trying to get that. If we could like stop having to move around so much, I'm going to get it figured out. Yeah, ERIM, yeah, there are more and more companies. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. There's going to be there's more and more companies hiring. You know, you'll find it. Do you think getting a course for $1,500 from one of the best designers worth it, or should I just follow the video you made, the Coursera mastering course? I was confused. So I don't have anything against, you know, buying courses from anybody or even doing boot camps. I don't have anything against them. My thing is that when I looked at the boot camps, I realized, like, to a new beginner, it sounds like, oh, this is really thorough. But when you're like know a little bit about it, you realize how shallow it is and how little they actually teach you. And I'm like, you want 10 grand for this? I'm like, I could learn all this on YouTube. I wouldn't say YouTube, but like, I could learn all this on my own. Like, you're not teaching me anything, you know? So I have I have nothing against buying courses or anything teaching you that. It's just, it's all about the content. The reason why I recommend Coursera and the way that I did it is because it worked for me. And also, as I was doing it, it made sense. You know, I'm like, UX design is like doing user testing and blah, blah, blah and all this stuff, right? And I'm looking at these boot camps and they're just breezing past it. Like I said, I work with 2 people who did the Foundry, which is supposed to be like one of the best boot camps out there. And they don't know jack about user testing. Nothing at all. And they've been a UI UX designer longer than me. They've been at the company longer than me. And you know, I'm not saying they're awesome people, okay? I love them to death. They're super awesome. You know, every time we have to go in the office, we always get lunch together. But they also tend to have the most trouble. They're always the ones putting their designs in and getting them kicked back because management's like, no, this is not good. You know? And it's because there's lots of things they did not understand. These, you know, and I can only say they're smart people. One of them has a master's degree, okay? So I'm like, she's a very smart person. So I'm just assuming that the boot camp is not providing the type of information or they may be teaching it, but they're not focusing on it or not teaching it well, So, yeah. Love from Sri Lanka. Thank you. One of these days, I wanna visit Sri Lanka with my wife. My grandparents, my mom's side. My mom's the one who's Sri Lankan. They both passed away, some years ago. But my grandmother taught me how to cook chicken curry, and a couple other. She gave me her recipes, and so I'll cook chicken curry from time to time. There's like a company that you can buy the Sri Lankan seasonings. You can buy them from Sri Lanka, and so whenever they're in stock, I'll buy them, and then I'll cook chicken from time to time. It's not nearly the same as what she used to do, but yeah, one of these days I gotta go to Sri Lanka. Personally, Google's very basic, and it's not just one course, rather a skill set. Yeah, I've been looking through Google's actually, Iram. Yeah, I've been actually looking through Google's course, and yeah, I got to look through it more thoroughly. But yeah, it does seem, from my first glance, it seems pretty basic. It's fine. Thanks for doing this. Current situation, most of the people are migrating from here. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's what I don't know about the. Yeah, I don't know a whole lot about the current situation in Sri Lanka to see. I've heard things, but it's like a lot of times the media is only giving you one side of it, so I'm always like super careful about making like sure like mindset like decisions. I try to like gather as much information as possible, but yeah, I hope things can work out because I heard Sri Lanka is beautiful. I was actually supposed to take my my grandparents. I was supposed to make a trip out there to take my grandparents' ashes. They wanted them brought back to their home village. But COVID happened, and so we never got to do it. I think one of my aunts, she has a house out there, and so she just went and did it. So, yeah, Nandish, cool, yeah, cool. Thanks a lot. Absolutely, I'm glad. So, yeah, appreciate you guys. I got to. I apologize. I think my wife is waiting on me. Hold on a sec. I'm a beginner currently learning by myself. How do I find unique problem to solve? Like, there are lots of people making studies which are just the same. Let me see. Mojaidu? I hope I pronounced that correctly. How do I find unique problem to solve? Lots of people making case studies which are just the same. To be honest, so what I suggest, Maja, is when you're learning and you're trying to find projects to work on, especially for your portfolio, I tell everybody, pick something that you are passionate about. I know plenty of designers that use like the client generators. Well, they'll give you case studies or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. But the problem is, like, I've tried it, and the problem is I get bored really easily because I'm like, I don't really care about this one, And I'm like, and I'm not getting paid for this, so I don't have that kind of motivation. So I say just choose something that you yourself are, whatchamacallit, that you yourself are like passionate about, or a problem that you would love to see solved, or an idea that you have, and just go with that. You'll have lots of fun, So that's what I suggest. Thank you, Odyssey. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna check it out. Amanda, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining again. Yeah, there'll be a part 3. I don't know when it'll be. To be honest, it probably wouldn't be around this time. Stephanie, you're absolutely welcome. It probably wouldn't be around this time because usually I'm working at this time, and then and that's why. So if it is again, it would be like later in the day. Yeah, so it would be like much later in the day. So yeah, unfortunately, but we'll figure something out. Maybe I can do something on the weekends or something. We'll see. But but most likely it would be a weekday, and it would be like much later in the day. Like what I did it here, so it'd be like we started this at 5 o'clock UTC, so it would be much later than that. So yeah, but I'll let you guys know. You'll see it on Instagram or on YouTube. You'll see the messages talking about it. Okay. And of course, if you ever can't make it to one of the live streams, I'm gonna put it on the it's gonna be posted on the YouTube channel and the Twitch channel, so you guys will be able to see it. All right, absolutely. I'm so glad that tells me that this is helping. 115. Oh, Maja, I know. Thank you so much for joining, Maja. That means a lot to me to know that it's that early and you guys are joining. But thank you guys so much for joining. It seems like this has been helping a lot, so I'm glad. That makes me happy. That makes me want to keep doing it. Whatever I can do to help you guys. I'm thankful for what I have. I'm very thankful I was able to find a good path to this, and I just want to share that path with others. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time.